And welcome back to another edition of the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. I'm your host, Sean Meyers, joined by co-host Justin Lowery, taking time out of his busy week to talk a little bit of WWE, both Raw and Smackdown. And a little bit later, we'll get into our predictions for this weekend's Extreme Rules pay-per-view as well. But first off, Justin, welcome. What did you think of WWE programming over the last couple nights with Raw on Monday and then Smackdown last night?
Mediocre. Same old. Still not really piquing my interest. And according to Twitter, it looks like a lot of people feel the same way as me.
Well, it's ironic that you mentioned that because news came out yesterday that Raw had its, I believe, lowest rating ever for an actual live show. I don't know, because in years past they've done some ones that were sort of like best of shows during holiday time, but the wording I saw was the lowest rating ever for a Monday Night Raw, and that's particularly concerning because it's summer and there's not a lot of competition. There's not Monday Night Football. There's no NBA or NHL playoffs. Really, this should be peak time for ratings. Now, obviously, a couple weeks from now, leading up to SummerSlam, maybe a little bit bigger then, but middle of July, that's ideal time because there's not a lot of competition really anywhere on TV other than Major League Baseball.
You would think it's concerning, but I mean, let's be real. I mean, they're in great shape financially. I mean, I don't think any worries from them, especially with the network and stuff. Rating less to WWE now more than ever. I don't think they're that worried, especially on the new deals. It seems like the contracts are ironclad, and it is what it is. But I think it shows that the people aren't really interested in today's product.
Well, so ratings going down, there's reasons for that because, people, whether they be watching later or watching through other platforms via, Hulu or whatever, that in general ratings are down everywhere. But seeing that specific number, does that do anything that might spark a change in WWE? Is that sort of I don't want to say them pressing the panic button after seeing that, but do you think that really registers at all to Vince McMahon and the people that surround him?
No, and because I don't think Vince will, flinch. I mean, if he would flinch, he would have gave up on Roman a long time ago. He wants to do it his way and only his way. He pretty much in corporate sponsors, and as long as they're happy and he's getting his money, I think, that it is what it is. That's not going to change. I mean, back in the 90s, he had to change because there was competition.
Right, and they if they didn't, then they would be out of business, and they don't really have that threat anymore. I think that would be a good future topic for trending topics, is maybe what we would do to change, whether it be Raw, SmackDown, or just the company in general. Don't want to spend too much time on that, so let's talk about what did happen. And we're going to combine the Raw recap and the SmackDown summary because we want to save more time this week for looking ahead with our predictions to Extreme Rules. But right off the bat, the main event of Monday Night Raw, I thought, was certainly the highlight, and that was Seth Rollins against Drew McIntyre. Great match. However, my concern with that, Justin, is it didn't really seem like that really helped build this pay-per-view to a great degree because McIntyre, although he's going to be ringside, isn't even a part of it. So you have a guy looking great in the main event, and yet 6 days from now, he's not going to be part of the card whatsoever. So it sort of seemed opposite. You give a great match for the fans that night, but you don't build interest necessarily towards this upcoming pay-per-view.
Again, isn't that kind of the overall problem? Again, they no longer have to build pay-per-views because of it's not about people buying the pay-per-views anymore. So I don't think there's a need to build that pay-per-view up anymore as there was in years past. And I think you could see that on a month-to-month basis. It was weird. It's very weird booking. I mean, it's good to see Drew getting some, main event time. I think we both agree that, he has a future within the company. But it is strange, but that's just WWE's booking anymore.
It seems like whoever the opponent is for Seth Rollins, it's going to be a great match nowadays. I mean, the run that he is on, It is rare air right now in terms of his in-ring ability. And whether it be Drew McIntyre, whether it be Dolph Ziggler, whether it be Elias at the previous pay-per-view, and then you go back before that with The Miz, with Finn Balor, all the way back to really when this all started with that gauntlet match in which Seth was in there for an hour and 5 minutes. He is so good right now in the ring that I think his matches, regardless if there's a storyline, regardless of who the opponent is, I mean, barring someone like Jinder Mahal or Mojo Rawley, and he's gone against both of them. But, for the most part, there is so much anticipation with his matches that it's worth watching just for that reason alone. So that's why I thought it was a positive main event. But again, it was a main event that made Monday Night Raw good, maybe not necessarily Extreme Rules.
No, I agree. I mean, if you're a hardcore fan, you enjoyed the match. If you're a casual fan tuning in, you probably are wondering why these two are wrestling one another, or that match did not go. Man, I really need to watch Extreme Rules on Sunday.
Right. They had the stipulation. The stipulation that Drew was able to now stay at ringside because he won, but that really, I mean, that's not a big factor in it. Really, I think it was just an excuse to put those two very talented guys in the ring together.
And I mean, that's also a very stupid stipulation that, put on a match, too. Oh, if I win, I could be at ringside. What do you do?
Yeah, it's almost as bad as someone being in a shark cage hanging over the ring and making that as an extreme stipulation.
Yeah, WCW-like.
So the main event delivered certainly in the ring, but as far as big-time storylines, that probably was not the biggest takeaway from Monday Night Raw. To me, it was the continued development of Roman Reigns and Bobby Lashley, and this is something that, with the way that Roman's presented each and every week, he's going to get big storylines, marquee storylines, and really plenty of time, plenty of exposure each and every week. This week was no different. Him and Bobby Lashley had, I think, a pretty good segment, and the fans always love a good brawl. That's what they got to kick off Monday night with Lashley and Reigns, and probably about nearly 24 superstars trying to intervene and separate them. Of course, that didn't work. We've seen brawls like this before. It sort of played out, but by the same token, it really seems like it works as far as the fan reaction. So your take from the Lashley and Roman Reigns brawl, and really going forward, is this a feud that is anywhere close to what the company maybe is hoping it would be?
I don't think it's where they're hoping it will be. I'm interested in the match because I want to see the reaction of the match. I do think the match will be decent. I'll be surprised if the match sucks between the two, because both are pretty decent in the ring. But how the crowd will react to the match. I mean, it could go either way. They could be it, or they could just crap all over it. Lashley doesn't really have a lot of charisma or personality to me, and I think that has hurt him in his career, especially in WWE. But it's going to be interesting how it goes. Is Roman going to be a little heelish in the match? Is he more the face? Interesting dynamic.
Real quick, it seemed like that interaction kind of showed what those guys are capable of as in-ring performers with their physicality, because Lashley at one point absolutely clobbered Roman, where it looked like, wow, that's a pretty stiff shot. And then Roman did a spot that he's done a few times, but it's always impressive, where he leaps over the top rope. So you could see, if you're Vince McMahon or some of those other people that make the decisions, why they want these guys to really be over, because with their look and their athleticism, it is impressive. That being said, it is often overshadowed by their poor character development and things like that. But at least in this brawl, I think both those guys showed a lot in terms of their athletic ability.
Oh, no, I agree. I mean, I understand why Vince would want to position Roman into the top spot, but sometimes if the fans don't want that, just maybe try giving the fans what they want and, see how that goes. Because clearly, what the ratings are what they are. Not too many people are tuning in to see, Bobby Lashley versus Roman Reigns.
That's a good point. One other thing I wanted to touch on with Raw was a tag team match that felt very much just thrown together. It was Baron Corbin, now known as Constable Corbin, of course, teaming up with Elias, who had basically been off of television for a couple weeks, and they go against Finn Balor and Bobby Roode. Bobby Roode likewise had been doing nothing for the better part of a month. So you get both Elias and Roode back on TV. That's a good thing, but it just felt like they were just sort of there, and Corbin and Elias get the victory. It was really building towards the Finn Balor Constable Corbin matchup coming at Extreme Rules. Wouldn't you like to see guys like Roode, guys like Elias, have more of a meaningful role as opposed to just throwing them in as sort of side notes in a match like this? And what do you see for maybe the future of all four of these guys going forward? Because if nothing else, at least they were in one of the more prominent matches on Raw this past week.
Again, here we are again with the WWE creative knowing idea what they're doing. Like, Elias is, in a feud with Roman or Seth for the IC title. They have a great match, and it's just done. And then you don't see him on TV, or you see him for 30 seconds in a backstage, segment. That makes no sense whatsoever. Bobby Roode comes over from SmackDown and immediately forgotten. None of this makes sense. Well, these guys haven't been really on in a couple of weeks. Let's just throw them in to basically an ongoing probe between two guys. Have them be side pieces into a larger angle. I don't even think the company knows what's going on the next couple of weeks, so it's hard for me to say, like, this is what I see them, doing. I think Elias is, should be in a pretty, high feud right now. Definitely a feud that lasts over 3 or 4 months. I think earned that. Same with Bobby Roode. They have 3 hours of TV, and yet they can't figure out to get these guys, mixed up into the, ongoing storylines.
A lot of people were speculating on Monday when they saw the team of Bobby Roode and Finn that this would finally be the opportunity for Roode to turn heel. However, 6 days before a pay-per-view in which Finn already has a match doesn't make sense. That being said, maybe they revisit this upcoming Raw. Then you have an opportunity to kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Turn Bobby Roode heel, give him something fresh, and then ultimately you build from there into a storyline with him and Finn Balor, and then you have 2 pretty talented guys at least occupied up through SummerSlam. But with Elias, man, it really seems like whatever they were originally planning for this Extreme Rules pay-per-view with the mixed man match to determine the #1 contender for Brock Lesnar. Remember, they introduced that and then abandoned it the next week and blamed it on Brock. It seems like he, more than anyone else, is probably suffering from potentially a late change in plans, because after his match with Rollins, you had to figure if nothing else, he was at least going to be in the IC title picture, but potentially being in this mixed man match. And it seems like whatever happened changed very quickly, and now they're just at a loss with him. It seems like this is a guy in Elias, and maybe I'm showing some bias here, but with Extreme Rules being in his hometown of Pittsburgh, how do you not have him in a big time match? It's a wasted opportunity.
When has Vince ever cared about people being in their hometowns? Usually the running joke is if you're in your hometown, you're probably going to lose.
Well, while that's true, but that at least shows that he does care about that, because usually, do you remember how many times Jim Ross got embarrassed in Oklahoma? It seems like that's a guarantee, one, that fans in the arena are going to care when you use someone in their hometown. It's going to lead to a bigger reaction, and it just seems like for a show like this, how do you miss that opportunity? Maybe he'll get a song, maybe he will get a thrown together match, but this should have been, a time where he was having one of the top 3 or 4 matches on the card, I think.
Yeah, my guess is he's gonna, in between the next to last match and the main event, that cool down period, maybe he gets a shot to go out there, do his song. Somebody runs out, he gets, destroy something, ha ha ha. That's the end of that.
Is Bailey, your dog, going to be doing the running?
Yes, he is. He's very upset. He just saw the dog who bit Nakamura, and he's
man,
going after.
So, anything else that stood out, either good or bad, from Raw? I know that you didn't have the opportunity to see all of it, but you're certainly well read. Anything else that you took away from Monday?
That they did not bring up about Brock Lesnar at UFC on Saturday night. I find that interesting.
Well, yes, and it seemed as though Roman alluded to it very early, but didn't specifically say it. At some point, they're going to have to. I mean, it was all over the news. If I'm a WWE wrestler, I'm almost embarrassed that Brock Lesnar's taking, the brand's title into UFC and showing up there more often than he showed up on WWE programming. It's almost insulting. For me, the takeaway is the complete halt in momentum between Bayley and Sasha Banks. It was perfect 2 weeks ago, Justin. You loved it. Bayley came out, Fist of Fury going at Sasha Banks. The fans loved it. Maybe they would do something interesting with the Dr. Shelby the next week. It was slightly below what I had hoped for. But then this past week, they show maybe 2 15 to 20 second clips, and they don't even have the audio from it. They're just having the announcers introduce that Sasha and Bayley are back counseling again with a new counselor. So no match this pay-per-view, but even moving forward, going into SummerSlam, it doesn't seem like they have a whole lot going on. They cannot get this feud right, and they've had years now on the main roster to try to do it.
Yeah, we talked about a couple of weeks ago. This was their fear, and they did it. They took something that was hot, the crowd was into it, people talked about it, and totally ruined it by the next week. Hell, pretty much by the end of the show with Kurt saying that, she needed counseling.
Right, yeah.
Everybody else turns, nobody says anything. They ruined it an hour later, and that's what the WWE does right now.
And by the way, Corey Graves has made mention. What's the logic behind sending those two to counseling when you have Braun Strowman basically, killing Kevin Owens every week, but goes unpunished. Nonetheless, that's the abbreviated version of the Raw recap. Let's shift over to Tuesday night and SmackDown. There was a lot going on, but Justin, as you and I talked about, it was basically the same handful of superstars involved in multiple segments, whether it be AJ Styles and Nakamura at a one-on-one match that morphed into a tag team match. They get probably combined over 30 minutes, whether it be Daniel Bryan and Kane, the New Day, the Bludgeon Brothers, Sanity. They get the opening segment, then they get the multi-segment main event. So you have a smaller roster on SmackDown, but it doesn't seem like they're using a lot of their very talented people when they book a show like that. It's just almost too much of AJ and Nakamura, too much of those other people that we mentioned that were in the main event.
Yes, SmackDown has a bit of a problem. It's very repetitive. We talked earlier, in the day. Team Hell opens the show, they close the show. Within the same storyline, that there's segments in between with them, the New Day in the back, and there's other guys like Samoa Joe, who is just not doing anything. And SmackDown only gets 2 hours. Roster's a lot smaller, but yet they're only using a handful of people, and they have a problem. They really do.
So let's talk a little bit about the main event. You mentioned it was Daniel Bryan and Kane back again as a tag team, and they are challenging for the tag team titles on SmackDown this Sunday against the Bludgeon Brothers. So you wanted to involve those two teams in the storyline, and what's better, to get everyone involved without doing a lot of work? Well, throw the other tag teams feuding in there. Of course, it's Sanity, which is a trio, against the New Day, a trio. So you end up having a 5-on-5 tag team match, 10-man total, to close out the show. And yeah, there's plenty of talent in this grouping of competitors. Daniel Bryan ultimately ended up getting the pinfall victory, and it came at the expense, of course, of Sanity, which some people weren't too happy with. It just seemed like they were, it's kind of lazy booking in a sense to just throw everyone together, say, let's have a Teddy Long style, throw everyone in a tag team match because that's how we're going to try to build to the pay-per-view, and just throw the two teams and the other two teams together. Your thoughts on the main event and really the outcome with Daniel Bryan getting the clean victory over, I believe, Eric Young of Sanity. Now 2 losses for Sanity in 2 of their first 3 matchups.
Yeah, Kane taking the pinfall there. I mean, what the hell is Kane doing? Just have Kane, do the job. That would have been better. He doesn't need to pick up any victories. Sanity, you're supposed to be making the guys look, as a threat to the New Day, strong. Having them, in what, 3 weeks, lose in 3 weeks? I think that's what it is. That's not going to do anything for the casual fan to take this team serious. And again, that's WWE's problem, the 50-50 booking. Okay, 1 week you lose, 1 week you win. It doesn't get anyone over. It doesn't create any new stars or any new threats. It's just there. Like I told you, I mean, Team Hell knows entertaining. Again, I'm not the biggest fan of seeing it again. Also, too, the whole show, when it came like that match, it felt like Teddy Long was back at SmackDown with all the matches that got turned into tag matches. I don't know. That lazy booking to me.
So let's talk a little bit about Sanity, because this seems like a very clear example of creative team changing their mind, not knowing exactly how to go about something. For weeks, we saw the vignettes teasing Sanity's debut. They didn't debut. There was kind of an off period where there was 2 or 3 weeks where they weren't even mentioned. Then they finally do debut, and they take out the Usos. So the next week, they have a matchup that turns into the Usos and Jeff Hardy against Sanity. Sanity loses. The next week, they come out, they attack the New Day, setting up this upcoming pay-per-view match. Then they have the 10-man tag. Sanity loses. Wouldn't it have made a lot more sense to just skip the nonsense with the Usos and Jeff Hardy, just have Sanity debut against the New Day, set that up from the start, maybe 2 or 3 weeks earlier, and not have them lose a match yet, at least this point? Whether they win or lose against the New Day, you could argue the New Day deserves to win that match. But if Sanity can't beat Jeff Hardy and the Usos, why should we theoretically believe they can beat the New Day this Sunday?
Everything you said, it makes no sense. It's like they don't. And I mean, first off, they brought them up the roster weeks before they even appeared. It's like, oh yeah, we're going to bring them up, and they're like, oh, I have no idea what we're going to do with them. And it took them a month to figure that out. And even when they figured it out, they didn't really figure it out. I don't know. I can't explain. That's why, to me, right now, watching WWE, one of the reasons why it's so hard to watch, because the logic and the writing and everything is just horrible.
So let's rewind about 3 months. When this podcast first started, it was right before WrestleMania, and there was so much anticipation for the upcoming match between AJ Styles and Nakamura at the time for the WWE title. And the match fell flat, in my opinion, and I think in most people's estimations, at WrestleMania. Well, they got another chance at the Greatest Royal Rumble. Not a great match. Then they continued to go forward, and they had Backlash. Again, it was a kind of a bogus finish. Not a great match. And then finally they delivered the great match that people were expecting at the last pay-per-view, Money in the Bank, with the Last Man Standing. That one was by far and away better than the other 4. The issue, however, is, and one of those 4 I should mention was on SmackDown as well, to set up a stipulation. That's to this juncture the only one Nakamura has won. Do you, at this point, start to get tired of seeing these two go at it? Because it didn't seem like it was anything special this past Tuesday. And to say that, you would have never believed it 3 months ago.
Oh, I was the people who were looking for that match since they both joined the company a couple years ago. I mean, couldn't wait for it. Yeah, their matches disappointed the hell out of me. I don't need to see it anymore. If all their matches were great, I probably couldn't get enough of it, because I love to watch great wrestling. I mean, it was clearly this done to, push both feuds, I guess. And the match was all right. I mean, it was what it was. I kind of figured we weren't going to get a clean finish, and at this point, it doesn't matter. But they tend to wear stuff out, and they're wearing out this match. I would really appreciate, them just to keep separated now for the next couple of months, because, I mean, there's reason to see them together.
It seems like this match wasn't necessary to really build these two separate feuds that we'll get to in a second, because ultimately it broke down to be a tag team match in which Jeff Hardy, the United States champion, and Rusev, the number one contender for the WWE champion, both got involved as well. Really, that's what they were just trying to set up, is again, let's, in the easiest and quickest way possible, build two feuds at the same time. But why did they need to have AJ and Nakamura have the one-on-one match from the get-go? Because now you see, okay, 6 times these two have gone at it. That makes each of the prior matches seem less and less special. If you do something 20 times, and I know New Day and Usos have constantly delivered despite the fact that they've been going at it probably more than a dozen times, but this one, it just seems like it cheapens what really was supposed to be a special, once-in-a-lifetime dream match.
Oh, I agree. You didn't need a singles match to get to the tag match. You could just book the tag match and said that you were putting 2 matches together, and like the US champion, the WWE champion against their challengers. I mean, that's all you need to say, and people would be like, "Oh, okay." Like there was no reason to have that match. It's like they needed to fill time. They needed to fill time, but yet, where's Joe? Like we talk about only using the same handful of people. Well, there's one segment right there that you could have used somebody else in. Again, it's just not the proper use, I think, of all the wrestlers.
So ultimately, as you just saw in that photo, it was Rusev who got the pinfall victory. Rusev against AJ Styles, and then, of course, Jeff Hardy against Nakamura. Are you buying Rusev right now as a legitimate... I mean, yes, we know he's probably not going to win, but is this a good enough storyline right now for what is technically the most important title in the company right now with Brock away?
I mean, do I buy him as a threat to AJ? No. Am I happy to see him in there? Yes, but that's a personal opinion. I mean, I think he's earned it. He's come back from basically being buried in a way. He came out strong, and then after that Cena feud, his character was dead. You know, so it's good to see that he, kind of got back up there on the card. But he has no chance of winning. I think it's just a one-off match at a pay-per-view to lead to something bigger and better for AJ and SummerSlam.
But I mean, what I'm basically saying is, if you were to base these matches for Extreme Rules on the amount of storyline effort put into it, the significance of it, this one certainly would not be the biggest match. I mean, you would have to say it's probably number 2, number 3, maybe even number 4 in terms of what they've really tried to get over as the big matches for this show. And that's kind of disappointing, but by the same token, I get it, because it's sort of a filler match until AJ probably does something bigger.
Right. I mean, too, it just sucks that your title, your WWE title, your biggest title in your company, isn't the number 1 marquee match. I always find that strange.
Well, we'll see where it ends up on the card on Sunday. That's going to be interesting. The little hidden aspects that real wrestling fans pay attention to, like where it's placed on the card. However, there was one real positive from SmackDown, in my opinion, and that was long overdue. After weeks of teasing Andrade Cien Almas against Sin Cara. Yeah, Sin Cara, not a big-time star, a guy that really, for long periods of time, doesn't even get on television, but wanted to see Andrade go against him. Well, it finally happened after being bumped off of TV for what seems like about a month straight. And they wrestled like they had a lot to prove. Andrade Cien Almas got the victory. It was not an easy match for him. It was not a short match. And while there was some debate if that's a good thing or bad thing, I'm fine with it because it got to show how good he is in the ring. I don't know, it probably went about 10 minutes. You could have done a 3-minute squash match, but what does that prove? I mean, Andrade's there because he's a great in-ring performer. They don't need to build him like they would build the Bludgeon Brothers. So I was fine with how it played out, and both those guys deserve credit for really putting their bodies on the line and packing a lot into a 2-segment match that I think really, in some ways, probably stole the show.
Yeah, like you said, I was happy with the match. I thought the match was entertaining. Was that the right call? I don't know. I mean, I can go either way with it. I see pros and cons. Like we talk about, the casual fan sees that and goes, it's a hard time with Sin Cara. This guy's nothing special. I mean, the hardcore fan is happy to see, a pretty good, match, in-ring action. I mean, everybody knows the guy is phenomenal in the ring. Can't wait to see him, wrestle AJ Styles. Think how awesome that's going to be.
Yeah, I'm hoping it actually happens, Justin, because you never know with the creative team.
Right.
We might go another month without seeing Andrade Cien Almas. That was, again, the positive for me. There was, probably more negatives on SmackDown overall, in my estimation. Anything else that was notable, good or bad, for you on Tuesday?
The Asuka, Carmella, Lumberjack, James Ellsworth, Shark Cage. That whole thing was a train wreck, and it was awful. It was hard. I even tweeted it out when I was watching it that this is a train wreck.
And speaking of tweeting, by the way, you could always follow us at 5-Star Pod Wrestle on Twitter. Of course, Justin and my personal Twitter also shown throughout. But I agree with you. I mean, it's bad. It will be even worse when I think invariably Carmella retains the title on Sunday. We'll get into predictions momentarily, but man, it's so disappointing and frustrating to see what's happened with Asuka, because this is the definition of when people cite that the main roster, the executives that control the main roster ruin great stars in NXT. It's not technically rock bottom for her, but it certainly feels like it from where she was 6 months ago.
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, she came into, even WrestleMania, hyped up. I mean, people were very excited. And just like that, which, we talked about after Mania and the Beard, and I thought was going to happen, she's been made to be nothing. I mean, she has no importance anymore in the division. She's just like any other, woman wrestler, which is bad. She was supposed to be your special attraction. I was looking forward to seeing her.
Well, now she's a special attraction for intergender matches, I guess, right? That's her special attraction, and she wrestles in terrible intergender matches.
Yeah, and she deserves better than that. It's pathetic. And why? I mean, I'm not a fan of James Ellsworth being back. I mean, I get what they're doing with the storyline, but I mean, I thought his character ran its course. He had a moment, his year with the company, but it was time to move on.
Yep.
Now we're just rehashing stuff we saw all of last year. It's the same stuff.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Well, overall, probably not the best week of build on the go-home shows for both Raw and for SmackDown leading into Extreme Rules. Speaking of Extreme Rules, we're going to get into that momentarily as Justin and I, along with Sean Saputo, who has already phoned in his predictions, will go over our picks for the pay-per-view. That's upcoming here on another segment of the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.